Thank you very much for having us here and for the invitation, Michael. And it's our pleasure to speak to the Benicia Club. I'm Howard, WB2UZE. And just a little bit of a background of myself. I've been a ham. It's 54 years now. It's a long time. Got started when I was 13 years old. Been doing CW ever since. I do have microphones in the shack, but they are most likely only used when there's a guest who doesn't know CW and we have to show off the rig. So I've been doing CW all that time. And very pleased to do the presentation here today with Jim W6JIM, who actually joined our club about a year ago and became an instructor shortly thereafter. So Jim, maybe you say a little introduction about yourself too.
Sure. I'm Jim W6JIM. I'm from a little unknown town in the East Bay called Walnut Creek, California, and I'm very happy to be talking to local clubs here. So I'm excited to meet some local people here. I grew up here and graduated high school from Northgate High School. I don't know if that's a familiar name or not, but then I joined the Air Force when I was about a year after high school and was in the Air Force for 30 years all over the world, and actually became a ham in 1996, about halfway through my beginning of my career, I guess. And actually operated for my first 3 years out of Misawa, Japan, when I just became a ham and as a 7J7 ACM. And now I'm back. I'm retired as of about 5 years ago. I'm back in my hometown here at Walnut Creek. I'm partial to 10 Tech radios, and I'm 100% CW for the last year and a half since I joined the club. Howard?
The Long Island CW Club. How to learn and have fun with Morse code. That's a very important thing that we always talk about. You know, in life, if you're studying and you're really not enjoying what you're working on, it becomes a task. CW becomes a task unless you're having an enjoyable experience. And we know that, and that's what we try and structure right away. So what would you say the attraction is of CW? Why is there so much interest in CW now? Well, you know, we ask people this question all the time. Some people say, well, it's not being forced on them anymore. You know, back in the day, we had to take, CW purposely to get our licenses. In 1965, when I got my novice, we had to learn right away 5 words a minute to take the novice test. And then we had to learn 13 words a minute within 1 year, or else we would lose our novice license and not be able to progress and start again. So we had to get 13 words a minute and pass our general right away. So they eliminated that a few years ago. So some people say because it's not being forced, now there's more of an interest. That's maybe point one. Another point is there's a tremendous interest in summits on the air and parks on the air. Now, of course, you can do sideband up at the mountaintop, but if you're going to lug up equipment, it's a lot easier to take up a CW rig than a sideband rig, because a sideband rig is a lot heavier. It's a lot more of a power supply that's needed to push it. So a lot of the younger people who are into SOTA and POTA, parks on the air, want to do CW. So a lot of young people, which is very good, are coming to the club to learn. And then I personally think that maybe people feel that our world is, you know, too instantaneous. There's a certain charm to have a vintage communication like CW that brings you back a few years when times were a little bit simpler. You know, right now you can get everything you need on a phone in a snap of a finger or speaking to Alexa. So I think there's a certain charm and a calling to learn CW. But look, the high-tech world like FT8, it's fascinating. It's an amazing mode. It's enabled a lot of people to get on the air and work DX. But, you know, with CW, you have to use your mind. CW is an oral language. It's the same thing as learning Spanish, for example. And you don't really have a computer do the work for you. Your computer is your brain. Okay, Jim, why don't you take the next one?
Sure. So here we come to our learning slide. Our program, the way we break it down at the Long Island CW Club is that we teach two classes for the full 40 characters, B1 and B2. So the first 20 characters we cover in B1, about 5 weeks, and then another 5 weeks or so for the second 20 characters. And we teach them I heard someone mentioning earlier, the Farnsworth, and that means that we're teaching at a quick character speed of about 20 words per minute. But we give you 5 word per minute spacing. So you have we want you to learn it as a sound. So that's the reason for kind of speeding it up a little bit, as opposed to how I learned not too long ago, but 1996, where you'd hear these tapes of the really slow 5 word per minute sound. And it was kind of tough to pick it up that way. Although we did, but we are having great success using the Farnsworth method. And then, of course, we want to get people on the air making QSOs as soon as possible. We found that the best advice that I've heard anyone in the club give is get to 40. 40 characters is what you need to learn, and the best advice is get to 40 characters as quick as you can, and then get on the air, because on the air your experience is just gonna you're gonna learn so much quicker with that little bit of extra added stress that's on you. And then we putting in the time. All we really ask is that, and I have not yet had a student tell me that they couldn't learn CW if they were just doing 15 minutes a day, 15 to 20 minutes a day of practice. They'll pick up the characters as we teach them. And we use an app program called G4FON, and some of you may be familiar with it, but it's a practice program for learning the characters, and we use that in our online classes, and that's what the students use as well to practice on their own time. Howard?
It's everything that Jim says is very important, and it all leads to making the QSO. We always stress that the end game in learning CW is getting on the air, and we strive to get our students on the air within 3 or 4 months of starting out. Of course, 3 or 4 months is different for each person's effort, depending how much time they're putting in, but that's a pretty good range, because if you're not using this language that you're studying, it's not as relevant and it's not as easy to remember everything. It's just like if you're studying a foreign language, if you're not practicing and speaking and you're just listening to audio tapes or whatever, you're not going to be as proficient. So the end game is getting on the air. That's the important thing. All right, this is a question that comes up quite often. What key to use? Now, if you put this question out on a forum on QRZ.com or EHAM, for example, what should I use when I'm starting a straight key or a keyer? Well, you probably get 2,400 replies. But our take on it is that up to 18 to 20 words a minute, we recommend that people stay with a straight key. Now, why? Because when you're using your hand and you're formulating the letters, you're using your mind more, and your mind is connected with your hand. A machine is not making the letters for you. So we think you get a better education and a better grasp of the CW if you're formulating everything yourself. If you then want to increase your speed above 18, let's say, why are we talking 18? Because 18 to 20 words a minute is about the speed where it becomes cumbersome to write. And you're going to have to start moving into head copy. And then once you're proficient at that level and you're ready to go on to a head copy and break that barrier of 18 words a minute, which is a common plateau in CW learning, we think it's then helpful to start using a keyer. And as far as a bug, they're fascinating, they're vintage, but it takes a lot of skill to use that and a very good fist to make it sound good enough that most people will be able to copy. The days are gone where people can really copy a bug with what we used to call a banana boat swing or a real personality on the key. Old timers like myself can copy that. New people into CW will struggle. So we also recommend that the bug should stay almost last. Now, are we like a stick in the mud with this and saying that you cannot use a keyer? Of course not. Whatever you feel like doing, if you want to start off with a keyer, if that's your wish, that's fine. This is just our recommendation. Of course, if there is an issue with arthritis or something like that, in some cases, we do recommend going to the keyer. Okay, Jim, why don't you take this?
Sure, I'll take this one. Fear of CW. This was my limiting factor whenever, and the reason why I was looking for the Long Island CW Club or something like it. And I guess there's nothing like it. I'm glad that I found it. But I operated from '96 till about 2006 for about 10 years, mostly CW, and did pretty well. I think I only got up to maybe about 15 words a minute. But then I had to take about 10 years off when my military career really started to get busy. And so actually I was probably out for about 13 years until I got back in and I found the Long Island CW Club. And the reason I was looking for something like the Long Island CW Club is because I still had a working grasp of the characters. I did need to improve them when I was getting back into this after my retirement. But the big factor was I was really afraid. I knew that there was a back and forth and a type of protocol you're supposed to use whenever you're making CW contacts, but I just couldn't remember how that went. And being in the military, and I think that CW kind of draws people who are perfectionists to this part of the hobby, is that nobody wants to make a mistake. But one of the things we teach in class is that everybody makes mistakes, and it's not normal if you get on and have a QSO and you don't make a few mistakes and hear a few mistakes. So we work through that through a lot of practice. We get to know each other in class. We become friends and get to where we're not afraid to or embarrassed to make mistakes in front of each other, and that's when we really can progress with our teaching. Yeah,
very true, Jim. And it's very interesting to me that there is really, with most people, a very strong fear to learn CW and to use it on the air. And this was very surprising to me because years ago, when we were young, back then there were no cell phones or televisions in the house that we could monopolize as kids. Your parents would be watching what they wanted to. So a lot of kids to communicate at night with other youngsters got into ham radio, and we all got on the air, and there was just no fear at all. So growing up myself, I never thought that there was any fear about using CW on the air. And then when we started this club, we found that this was really holding people back, and we designed our club to fight this from the get-go. And we try to make people as comfortable as we can. We never allow anybody to say the word sorry. Let's say they're sending CW and they make a mistake. The first thing they say is they're sorry. We don't allow the word sorry in our classes. And, we structured the club to include a lot of other activities to make people comfortable. And we'll tell you about that later, and have a community so that we could make this an atmosphere for learning, because we realize that fear of CW is something to deal with. All right. Well, getting on the air and QSO Protocol. I teach two classes at the Long Island CW Club. I teach the basic course where students are just learning the characters. And I also teach a course where after you learn the characters, I teach you how to take those characters and use them in the proper format in a QSO. The thing that I was the most afraid of and was holding me back the most, now I'm teaching it. So, I figured I needed to tackle that and help out others who might be facing the same problem. So we set it up to where we study the CW protocol. It's very simple. We all have a worksheet that we have. It's very simple, and we practice it in Zoom. And the reason I have this slide up here where it says back and forth is because when you hear it, when you practice it and you have two good CW operators, and they don't have to be going fast. It could be any speed. It could be 10 words a minute. But when they do it right,
One person's doing one thing, and the other person's doing their thing. It's like good music. It sounds like music to my ears, and it's almost I like to say it's almost like a dance. Whenever someone's doing I don't know, like a ballroom dance or some kind of a thing where each person has to know exactly what the other person's doing. It's a beautiful thing to watch, or I guess you could say kind of like a tennis game that keeps on going, where everyone's hitting it back and forth and back and forth. And so we practice so that everybody knows and is familiar with the QSO protocol, and then takes away that fear of getting them on the air. And that's our goal, is to get people on the air as quickly as possible. Howard?
Yeah, that's right, Jim. And one of the things that is a concern to people and makes them nervous about that is they don't know what to say. When do they give the signal report? When do they give the name? When do they give the QTH? And we explain all of that, and we write down this protocol, and we call it the protocol, and we give them the format. And basically, as far as the QSO goes, we have some reasoning of why we have certain orders. For example, people want to know, well, what do you say first? Well, we call it protocol stage 1. We like to give the signal report first and the QTH, then the name. Now, why do we do that? If conditions are not good, if there's QSB, if there's fading, if there's QRM, you really want to deliver the most important things to the other person as quick as possible. And the most important things of a QSO are really the RST and the QTH. The name is gravy. You don't really need to know the guy his name is Bob, but you really got to know where he's located. There are some cases where you can't look up the person in QRZ because they're not in there, and it would be very helpful to have the QTH. So that's why we set this protocol up, and this relaxes people to get going on the air. Okay, head copy. As I always say, I love this picture that Jim found. Actually, Jim is the producer of this PowerPoint. It's not me. And he put it all together in a beautiful form. And I thought this is a very good depiction of what is head copy. I teach head copy Tuesday nights. As a matter of fact, I'm supposed to be teaching tonight, but because Michael invited us to do the presentation today, we postponed that. So every Tuesday at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock your time is the head copy class. Now, how do we teach head copy and what is it? As I mentioned before, after about 18 or 20 words a minute, it's very tiring to be writing at that speed, and you're going to get writer's cramp, and you're going to use a heck of a lot of paper. So it's very good to put the pen down, but how do you do it? Well, there's nothing written on the internet about how to copy. You won't find head copy. You won't find anything about it. So basically, I have related my personal experiences on how I do it to the students. And some of the ways that I have taught have been verified later by other people who have tried the techniques and they see it. And we have some students that come into the class that are young, like 17. And since they have very fresh and open minds, they have also confirmed that that's the way they naturally head copy. There's not enough time to go into now how we do it, but it involves breaking down the code in different pathways and actually seeing the CW like a ticker tape, like you'd see underneath CNN where they have that crawl. And this is the way we teach it. And it's a very cerebral thing, but it's very satisfying once you can sit back in the chair, close your eyes, and copy CW like it's a language.
A lot of people ask, how fast do I need to be? Or, am I fast enough? And do I need to increase my speed? And the answer is you only need to get as fast as you want to be. I've had wonderful CW QSOs at 12 and 13 words a minute. I also have great QSOs at 18 or 20 words a minute. It just depends on where you want to go and what you want to do. And the main thing is that the main thing is you get to pick where you want to go with it. No one's going to force you to do one thing or the other. And what I found is that once you get the characters down, and then once you learn how the QSO is going to go, you take our classes on on a CW protocol. You know when you're supposed to send, you know what's going to be sent to you. You start to relax. And whenever you were first just getting maybe 50% of the conversation, the more you relax, the more that the CW just kind of flows over you, and you don't overthink it. And then your speed will just start to naturally increase. Howard?
Yes, and you know, what is speed, and what are the speeds that are of value? Well, most people progress quite easily to 12 and 15 words per minute after they study a few months. Then there are these plateaus that I spoke about that take a little bit of a push to get over, and we have classes that deal with that. Now, what speed do you really need? Well, I myself, I send 24 words a minute when I'm operating on CW. Now, you would ask, well, why do I come up with 24? Why isn't it 25? Why isn't it 23? You'll find that every word per minute over 20 words a minute actually sounds different and faster. I find that at 24, it's a comfortable speed for me, that my hand's not going to get tired. And also, there'll be people that will copy that. If you start pushing it above 24 words a minute, you might be calling CQ and nobody will answer. But at 24, especially on the lower end of the band, like the extra portions of the band, the Europeans will answer you. Some Americans will, mostly Europeans. Do you need to go higher than that? Well, look, D-Expeditions will send anywhere between 30 and 40 words a minute. Now, they're not going to be having a QSO with you at that speed. You'll have to recognize your call sign in 599, so it's not critical. So is it necessary to go over 24 words a minute? No. Is it enjoyable to build your speed? Yes, to some it is. But if you stay around 15 words a minute, there's plenty of QSOing to be done these days. There's a lot of slow speed contests that are coming up. The Straight Key Century Club that Jim is very active in has plenty of contacts to be made in the middle portions of the band, for example, like 7055 on 40 meters. And there's plenty of activity to be had. So we like this video very much. And we like to show this here to give an example of how we teach. This is what could possibly happen to students that don't study and don't pay attention to their teacher.
Short wave, take it down, quick. What's it say?
Ah, shut up.
What'd that mean?
You too?
You know, I could watch this video 1,000 times. I'm a real Three Stooges fan. And when I found that, and that's on our website too, I just loved it. That's real CW, and that's sent on probably on a J38 key, something from that era, 30s, 40s, that looks something like this. It's a beautiful fist. Of course, they didn't have electronic keyers back then. It's not real words, it's just letters, but perfectly formed. And Curly and Larry got slapped because they couldn't decode. Of course, we don't do that, which brings us to our next part of the presentation. What is the Long Island CW Club all about? You know, teachers of Morse code, that's what we are. Okay, how did we get started and why did we get started? Now, some people might wonder, why did we call it the Long Island CW Club? If I knew that we would have 1,012 members, and this particular PowerPoint was updated a few days ago, it's already out of date because we have like 1,020 members now in just a few days. We get about 4 or 5 members per day coming in at this particular rate. We started the Long Island CW Club almost 3 years ago, myself and Rich K2UPS, because after field day, we felt that there were not enough CW operators on Long Island to cover the demand for that position during field day. And, you know, you get 2 points more for a CW contact over sideband, and the clubs there were dying for CW operators. So we figured, why don't we give back and start a club and teach CW? Well, I thought we would have 30 or 40 people that I could strong arm into joining from the 3 clubs that I belong to. But because we found out about Zoom very early in the game from my business, was using Citrix and they weren't happy with that for a video conference platform. And I found out about Zoom. I said, this is terrific. And back then, if you mentioned Zoom, people would think you're talking about a motorcycle or something like that. But we actually used Zoom to become a hybrid club where we had brick and mortar activities. And at the same time, we would put all those activities on video conference. And because we had video conference, we could open up the club to the entire country and the entire world. So we quickly grew to the membership of being over 1,000 that we have now in 50 states. And now today, we picked up Chile as country number 20. So what do? We teach 50 classes per week, 50 classes per week for adults. We teach 9 classes a week for children. What are we doing with kids? When the COVID lockdown started in March, one of our members, Rob K2MZ, came to me and he says, well, why don't we teach kids that are locked down and give them something to do? And I said, that's a fantastic idea. And so we promoted this through social media and other means. And we've taught over 300 kids, and about 25 of them we got licensed, and about 8 of them have upgraded from technician to general. And they're some of the most fantastic CW operators you ever want to see. When they come into my live QSO class, they're just amazing at 11 years old. And I've seen the kindergarten kids sending perfectly too. It's really something to behold and very encouraging. And we're very proud of the work that we're doing with this. So as far as brick and mortar, of course, we're doing a lot more before COVID. We had to give something up, with the close contact, but we were going to visits, to museum visits. We were having luncheons together every quarter. We were going on field trips. All those things had to stop. But one thing we're still doing is we're doing our QRP and POTA operations. And today the club went down to one of the beaches on the South Shore of Long Island. It was an unbelievable 70 degrees today. Beautiful day, probably the warmest day we'll have until spring. And we made about 100 POTA contacts from that particular park that we were on. And a lot of the club members from all over the country worked us too. So we're hybrid in that we have local activities on online. Let's go to the next slide, Jim. Why don't you take this?
Sure. So I used to have to describe what this was, but now here we are all in the same Zoom meeting, just like we teach our classes. So we all log in Zoom, just like this. All you have to have is a microphone. You don't even have to have a camera. You just have to have a microphone and something to make some noise, an oscillator of some sort. Some people will buy a outboard oscillator, and some people just turn down the turn off the power on their rig and just use their rigs as the oscillator. And then the sound that you make on your oscillator will be picked up on your webcam, and then you can practice with us. We can have 100 students in a class, and we just run it just like a normal classroom. Howard?
Yeah, I mean, we don't get up to 100 students. I would say the average student attendance is between 15 and 30, depending on the class. Okay, so all of this information is on our website, but I'll give you a little summary. We have classes at the beginner, intermediate, and advanced level. And with 50 classes a week, there's quite a variety. Some repeat and some are unique. Now, to make this fun and to give people a break from just studying CW, we brought in a lot of presentation type of classes, which we call forums. Monday nights, we'll have a forum that gives presentations on bugs, keys, and straight keys and cootie keys. And we bring in outside people to speak, just like Michael invited us. And Monday night, we also have basic electronic theory that we're teaching. We're teaching AC and DC theory in general to the club, and also to prepare people for the extra exam. On Wednesday nights, we have what we call the CW Makers class, where we're actually teaching how to build and how to solder. As a matter of fact, the teacher has a microscopic camera so he can focus on circuit boards while he's soldering. And we're into other aspects of CW because of the fear of getting on the air, as we talked about. You know, people worried about making mistakes and you know, having people think that they're not a good operator and being nervous about what to do. We're into internet CW now. We have our own internet CW channel just for our club, where people can communicate with each other on the internet, and we do that Friday nights. Also on Friday nights, we have Friday Fun with CW, where we just do games. We play all types of games. We send one-line jokes back and forth to each other in CW, like, why does the chicken cross the street? That type of joke, and you have to decode it and you know, give the answer. We do that. We're also involved in sending modulated FM as CW over 2-meter repeaters. This is a big project and a big push for the club to use the underutilized repeaters that are all over our country, which is such a shame that they're just sitting there, tremendous expensive assets that clubs have to fund that are not used. So we're bringing a combination of echo link and live RF to repeater contacts, you know, on Friday nights. It's a very exciting thing. On Saturday, we have our POTA, SOTA, and QRP forum, where we bring in speakers. And once a month, we have a speaking engagement for the entire club. In the middle of November, we're bringing in the founders of the Reverse Beacon Network, if you people know what that's all about. And then in December, we're bringing in people to speak about logging software. On Sundays, the forum is the Morserino. Also, if you know about that, it's a very interesting keyer that can be used online, and we get online with that too. And then we also have an antenna forum where all types of antennas are discussed. We just started that up. We had a discussion on fractal antennas, which are those mini antennas that would be inside cell phones that are all bent up in all different shapes, the type of things you never think about. And we're doing 2 presentations on mag loops, and we're in the middle of that. So that's a rundown of everything the club does. And we do that so that people are having fun, that they'll come back, because if we're just going to teach 50 lessons a week on CW, people are not going to stay with that. Maybe some will, but most will not, because it's challenging to learn CW. And like I've been saying, and Jim's been saying, if you're not enjoying this ride and you're not really coming to a community and looking forward to that, then you might think that Netflix would be a better opportunity. And there's great things on Netflix now. I mean, you could spend the rest of your life on that and never leave the TV. So that's what we're competing with. Okay, YLs. What are we doing with YLs? This is something that's very important to us. How to promote ham radio. Ham radio, as we all know, is unfortunately mostly a 50-year-old plus hobby. So we're trying to do our best to combat that with our program with the kids, but also with our YLs. When we found out that 60% of the kids are girls, I said, you know, we got to get the YLs into this club. So we have 54 now. We're not going to meet our goal of getting 100 by year end, no matter how much we're trying and how much we're advertising. But we have 2 classes a week only for YLs, and they're having a great time. You know, they told us that maybe it's a little bit intimidating for one YL to be in a class all with men, and say, okay, so our YL classes range anywhere from about 10 to 15, depending on the evening, and they have a great time. Jim, why don't you take this?
Sure. So if you're interested in learning more about the club or want to join the club, you just have to go to our website, longislandcwclub.org. The only requirements for taking our classes is that you have Zoom. You need G4FON, which is a program you can download for free. And that's what we use for practicing and learning our code. And then a straight key or a paddle, and then something to make some noise, an oscillator, upward oscillator, or just your radio.
Yeah, I mean, you can use the side tone in your HF rig. We know how to adjust Zoom so it doesn't reject the CW tones. If you don't have it set up in the advanced settings on Zoom correctly, it'll consider your CW an echo and it'll cancel it. So we take care of that. If you have a MacBook and you don't have a Windows computer, you don't need to use G4FON at home. You'll use it online with our instructor, and you can use any player at home that works on a MacBook. We have a very, very big club Dropbox loaded with all types of videos. We record everything like your club does. And we have a compendium of all types of CW information, how to learning programs, and it's a wealth of information. So that's basically our presentation. We talked about how we teach, what the club is all about, but what we really like the most, and we do these presentations often, we really like to take questions. Now, anytime we open up the floor in any of our presentations for questions, the first thing that happens is it's a dead silence. And we might not get any questions. Sometimes they filter into the chat. Some people like to do it by the chat. We're used to that. But we really like to hear what people think, what problems they're having, what questions they have. It's more fun to be asked a question as a CW instructor than to talk. I'm the type of person, although you might not be able to tell from this presentation because I had a talk for 30 minutes. I'm more of a listener than a talker, if you can believe that. So if there's anybody there that has some questions or comments, any struggles that you've had with CW, we're all ears.
Hey, Howard, you mentioned you're going to have the RBN people for one of your meetings.
Yes.
Would you do me a favor?
Yes.
Ask them why they won't spot my call sign.
Call sign looks like number and a signal report.
Oh, how do you like that?
Yeah. So also, I'm from Mississippi. In about near my home QTH, there is a NA5NN in Lumberton. It's a DX club, and they won't spot that call sign either.
Have you reached out to them, JB?
I have. They do not answer my emails. And Randy, W5UE, that manages NA5NN, he's also reached out to them, and they haven't responded to him. Okay.
JB, let's have some contact after the club, after this by email. And, I'll mention this to the guy who's going to be speaking to us is one of the founders. And I'll just ask him if this is a computer issue or can they program in calls that are being blocked for some reason or not being received. Maybe they don't have the technology to do it, but I'll try and get an answer.
I think it's a blocked thing because during the October Stu Perry Top Band contest, I signed as NR5NN/6. And also during the California QSO party, I did the /6 thing. And I got a few spots out of that, but just straight NR5NN or NA5NN, neither will spot.
Well, I'm curious, JB, just to pin this down. If you used another call sign from your station, are you hitting the RBNs?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this is definitely a block. I mean, this is fascinating. I mean, I'll ask.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm going to get a better answer than you guys did, but I'll try. JB, let me wait till after he speaks on the 17th, where I get a little bit friendlier with him. I'm going to invite him to join the club too, which we usually do. We invite people to join the club after they speak. So let me schmooze with the guy a little bit, and then I might be able to figure this out for you. Okay?
I will do that. I use my daughter's call sign, K6HES, or Dick is on here, K2GMY. He lets me use, Dick lives across the street. He lets me use his call sign, and gosh, I get spots all over the world from that.
Okay. And you know, it's funny you mentioned Stu Perry. Stu Perry, for people who don't know who Stu Perry was, he was Mr. 160 meters in the 60s. And somebody has his call sign now in Massachusetts, I believe. Well, anyhow, in looking through an old shoebox of cards from the 60s, JB, I found 2 QSL cards from Stu Perry himself, where he actually wrote some nice notes on the back of it. And I scanned it and sent them to the owner of the Stu Perry call sign now, and he really appreciated it.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Okay, I've got a question. This is Art, AA 6 a.m.
Yes, Art.
I see on the G4FON page, there are several links to downloads. Which version? I see the one at the top of the list is version 10. What are you guys using?
We're using version 10.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, I'll tell you, Art, G4FON himself, Ray, is in our club. So he usually makes these updates because we ask him to.
That's pretty neat.
It was very neat. It's very neat, like, because we have Groups.io as our email reflector, and somebody will ask a question about G4FON, and then Ray himself answers it. It just blows me away when that happens. It's very funny.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. Yes, Chris.
Yeah, thank you very much for a fantastic presentation, and it does sound very interesting. Just in general, I mean, like you say, some of the intimidation or fear or whatever is, as a beginner, and maybe once you start to transition to wanting to make a QSO, and maybe you are slow, how do folks take it that are faster? I mean, just in general, I guess. I mean, are they interested in that kind of thing, or is it kind of like, I'll move on because he's going so slow?
Jim, why don't you take this, especially about some of the SKCC people?
Sure. The normal practice is if you answer someone's QSO, that they should come back to you at whatever speed is that you come at them with. Now, that's not always going to happen. It happens most of the time. But once in a while, you'll find someone who doesn't want to slow down, but that's rare. And sometimes they might not be able to, then maybe they're using a bug and they can't slow down their dits anymore. So you're going to get some long DAWs and a lot of spacing, but they generally, everyone is happy to slow down. I myself, if I hear a fast operator and a medium and a slow, I'll go for the slow because I like to encourage people I figure that they're newer and still learning, and I want to encourage them and help them out. And I always enjoy the conversations. So that's been my experience. And now Howard's a 24 a high speed operator. Maybe how do you approach someone answering you slow, Howard?
Well, I operated in the portion of the band where, and the speed that I'm sending, nobody really approaches me slow. But if they do, I will slow down because that's the gentleman thing to do. Let me tell you, Chris, about one gentleman that we ran across a month or so ago. I run the live QSO class. Now, what do? Everybody, picture everybody here on Zoom. We all get on the same frequency. Let's say 20 meters, 14025. The guys on the East Coast all hear a German station in Europe. We all hear them. And because we hear them, we'll probably be able to work them. If he's going a little bit too fast, I'll decode, and then you don't have to worry about your speed or decoding. You just practice your sending. So we have this type of live QSO. And then if you tell me, Howard, I got a problem, I'm talking to you on Zoom. So I'm like sitting next to you in your shack. So we had a guy in Illinois that didn't have the best of antenna systems. And there was an Australian guy on 20 meters coming in long path. Now, how do we know it's long path? He had a 20-meter beam. He was beaming the other way over Europe. So he was calling CQ long path. All right. The student's call sign was long like yours, KD9FPC. That's a heck of a call sign on CW, especially going long path where you have a little bit of a flutter and fading. That Australian guy stayed with him for 15 to 20 rounds on his call sign till he got every single letter.
Wow.
And he made his first QSO to Australia, his farthest QSO, and around the earth the long way. I sent an email to this guy and I thanked him. That's the type of people you're going to meet. All the time? No. But they're out there. They're out there.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for that. And yeah, I like the kind of the group environment. It is motivating for me. I'm not sure if I truthfully have the motivation to sit there and learn it on my own. Perhaps I do. I mean, like you say, practice is one thing, but truly sitting there learning it. So anyway, very good. And thanks again for the presentation.
Well, thank you, Chris, for having us. And look, it's lonely listening to CW. I mean, what happens now with all the apps and the websites, people tend to become professional students of CW. And when I hear that, I tell them, forget the learning, just get on the air. Learn on the air. Because when you're learning with Farnsworth, we talked about that before, where you're sending 20 word a minute character speed, but at 5 words a minute, so you can get it. People don't send like that on the air. So there's a big shock sometimes when you get on the air and you find out, well, where's everybody, sending Farnsworth? They're sending an actual true 13 or 15 words a minute without spacing. So you have to reconnect. So we teach how to do that. So we want people to take the leap of faith, Chris, and we get them to do it. And it's very exciting. Sometimes they break out into a hot sweat and they have to take a cold shower after that. But it's something that they always, I mean, the fellow who made that Australian contact, he was talking about that for weeks.
It's like watching when you've seen someone making their first QSO in these classes, and it happens all the time. It's like watching the final seconds of an important football game. We're cheering, we're clapping. It's like when one person wins, we all win. And it's like, and like you were mentioning, Chris, when you're in an environment, you're like in a classroom environment, it is easier to learn. Because we're all focused on the same thing, and we're all kind of encouraging each other. We all are encouraging each other. And so it's a great learning environment. It's a lot of fun.
Just think about it. You want to work the guy long path in Australia, Chris, you got a call like yours. First he gets KM6, then he gets the M, then he loses the M, then he gets KM6, M something U. And then how do you fill in all of that? Well, we teach you that's what we call saving a busted call. Right on the air, right over Zoom, I tell you what to do. You don't repeat your whole call sign. You repeat what they're missing. If he's got KM6, you never say KM6 again. You go MRU, 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 MRU. Then if he's got KM6, MR, then you're going to send 10 U's in a row. Anybody with a brain who's a good CW operator will put that together, and then it all came together, KM6, MRU, and everybody started clapping.
Right.
It was very exciting.
Do people register for your classes and then you track their progress to see whether or not they stay till the end?
Well, I'll tell you, Dick, we have rolling admissions to all classes. So you can come and go to any class. And you will know with Beginners 1, which takes the first 20 out of the 40 characters, you'll know really if you should repeat Beginners 1 before you go on to Beginners 2. You'll know. And if you go on to Beginners 2 and you're not comfortable there, okay, so you'll stay. And then maybe you'll listen to the more advanced classes, and we allow people to audit those classes. You just put audit up on your Zoom screen and nobody will bother you. And you'll listen and you'll get your ear prepared for the end game. So we encourage people to listen to what's the next stage. So it's totally relaxed. We don't have any regimen. There's no pressure to succeed. And however long it's going to take, it's going to take. Sometimes it could take people 2 years to learn this stuff. Sometimes it could take 6 months. Younger people, the kids learn in 3 or 4 weeks.
Howard, we've had students get on the air, like Rob, K2MZ, maybe within 6 weeks they're making QSOs.
Yeah, Rob, K2MZ, the teacher for the kids, He joined the club last October, not even being licensed. No license. By December, he did 2,400 QSOs already. Now that's CW on steroids. We don't expect that, but that's, there's all different levels. There's some guy came to me the other day. He was all upset. He's an older guy. He has tinnitus in one ear and he's got an imbalance like with fluid in the other. And he says, Howard, I'm having problems. I can't learn. I said, listen, just get on the air with whatever you can do. Get the call sign, turn on Q or Z. You'll know the guy's name in QTH. Try and get the signal report. Once you get the call sign, you're golden. Sit back, relax, do whatever you can. If you can't do it all, big deal.
Howard?
Yeah.
You have QSOs on your Zoom meetings.
Yeah, the way we work it, Ed, is the live QSO class. Just picture this, Ed. Let's say I turned on my radio right now, which I could. You would hear the rig. Let me turn it on. I'll just show you how this works. That's N6PF, okay? You heard it.
Right.
So it was clearing up the CW, right? So that was 40 meters on 7023 N6PF. So if we were all here, okay, and I would say, okay, who hears N6PF? He's 5/9 here. So, okay, you say you hear him, Jim hears him, Dick hears him. I say, okay, who wants to work him? And we work them. We take turns.
Okay.
That's how we do it. That's the live QSO class. Now we have other classes where we teach QSO protocol. Jim, why don't you tell about your particular class?
Sure. And then, but maybe you're not ready to jump in and do the live one yet. And then you come into our regular QSO class, the one that I teach, and we do that all on Zoom. So we might have 15 students in the class, maybe 20 or whatever. And then we will just take turns. First, we learn. I make sure everyone knows what to send and how to send it. And we do different parts of the QSO, and we just do it in Zoom. So we just have like the people operating will have their mics on, the other people will have their mics off. And then eventually we'll build up to the point to where we've practiced calling QRL to make sure the frequency's open. We practice calling CQ. We practice answering a CQ, and we go through the whole thing on Zoom so that now you're ready just to jump on the air because you've done everything on Zoom. And in a lot of my classes, in fact, the last 3 weeks, I think I've had 3 different people make their first QSO after class, because we'll do an hour of class and I'll say, okay, class is officially over. Let's all get on the air. We'll still stay on Zoom, but we'll get on the, especially on the West Coast, here I am on the West Coast, you guys know, every Thursday night at 9 p.m. I think we're going to change it to 8 p.m. California time, that we'll do an hour in class, and then we'll do about an hour on the air. And so we can, a lot of us in California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Utah, and we are able to have a lot of QSOs together there too. And it's nice to have Zoom on because I can be listening to 2 students talking to each other on the air, and the guy might say, hey, I'm not sure what to send next. And I can coach him. I can say, hey, look, okay, here's what comes next. And then I can, like Howard, kind of translate if I need to. So
Mm-hmm.
Zoom is a really great tool in getting us up into HF.
And there have been times where I turn my radio volume down. Let's say Jim can hear somebody that I can't hear and he wants to work them, but he's a little too fast. I'll listen through Zoom and decode for Jim what he's hearing on his speaker, if he can put up his speaker close enough to the microphone of Zoom. So it's like I'm sitting next to Jim and listening to hear to what's coming through his speaker. So there's all different ways to do it, Ed. It's fun.
Thank you.
I want to thank Howard and Jim for their presentation. It was very, very interesting. It's really something that I've kind of wanted to do for a long time, although I've only been a ham licensed since 2014. But I still remember the days and the Boy Scout days way back when, to get that first class badge. you had to learn Morse code. And I remember hiding underneath my covers at night so I wouldn't wake my parents. My parents wouldn't think I was doing something I wasn't supposed to do, and working on getting that Morse code down. And then after I got my first class in the Boy Scouts, that was pretty much the end of it. But it's really something I would like to do. And even more so because I noticed that I know, Howard, you're on Long Island, and I have a daughter and son-in-law and 2 grandchildren who also live on Long Island.
Whereabouts, Larry?
In Wisconsin.
Wow, all the way out east.
Little bit up the road from you.
Yeah.
I did check. and I think it would be great. I'm going to definitely send something to my daughter to recommend that my 2 grandchildren who get involved. And I'm going to consider doing it myself. I did put something on the chat saying something, asking about what kind of straight key then do you recommend?
Yeah, I just saw that, Larry. I'll tell you what we recommend to start, okay? There's a company that makes very good 3D printed keys that are no more than about $35, cwmorse.us, cwmorse.us. They're starter keys. Everybody seems to be very happy with them, and they're also light enough that you could take them portable. If you want to step up to the plate to do something at the next level, you can find at a Hamfest or on eBay something like this, a J38. These were made from World War II up until, there you go. JB's got a CW Morse key. How do you like that, JB?
It's okay. It's a starter key.
It's a starter key for $35. But look, you want to step up to the plate, get a J38, you're probably going to pay, $70 or something plus shipping. These things were made between the World War II and let's say up to the 60s. Even were made by that Lionel train company we all know. When they were pressed, so you got one there too, JB, huh?
Yeah, this is from my novice days back in the early 60s, and it is a Lionel J38. It's the only thing I have over from my novice days, but
Yep. So those are good. And then, above $100 to $300, there's plenty of different keys by different, factories. And there's a link on our website if you go there to the links section of a good number of key manufacturers. There's American Morse, there's Kent, of course, Bagali. I was very fortunate to have my head copy class, and they shouldn't have done this. They did this in secret. They sent me a gift of a Bagali HST paddle, which is a beautiful piece of work. So there's no limit to how much money you can spend, Larry, but you can start off with CW Morse.
Oh, I know. I'm an amateur radio. I know about there's no limitation on what you can spend. that I know. We all know that.
I've got a question for Jim. This is Art again. Dick and I have taught the Morse code class over at MDARC in Concord. We did that a number of years ago, for a number of years. And one of the things that we taught with the Farnsworth method was the fact that even though we might have been sending at 13 words a minute as far as the code speed was, or the character speed, the code speed was only at 5 words a minute. And maybe you can explain, Jim, how as people get better and they increase their speed, the actual character doesn't change, just the spacing shrinks.
That's why we like to teach at a higher speed, 20 word per minute character speed, because I guess you have 2 choices. You can either learn at a slower speed, and that's how I learned. But then as you increase in speed, you've got to learn to hear that code, how it sounds faster. So you got to learn to get faster on your copying, as opposed to learning it at a fast speed already. But then you got to kind of, Howard kind of mentioned this. You can't learn CW the way we teach it and get on the air and just send it like that, because then someone's going to come back to you at 20 words a minute. So we feel like that if you learn it at 20 word per minute character speed with a 5 word per minute spacing, you're learning it more as a sound. And the goal, of course, is to have that sound turn into a character that you can hold in your mind. And then, at first we're just doing one character at a time, but the future goal is to hold one character, and then to be able to hold 2 characters, and then to be able to hold 3 until you can build a word. And that takes a while. That takes some practice. It starts with, of course, first getting familiar with all the characters, but then eventually you'll hold more than one word, and then you'll hold. But you're right. The actual spacing between the dits and the das, and how long a dit is compared to a da at 13 words per minute, that ratio is the same at 25 or 30 words a minute. I think that's where you were going with that. But so that's why we teach it the way that we do. And so far we've had pretty good success with that.
Can you give me an idea of which letters you teach in which order, how you do that?
We teach using, I guess it's called the Koch method. And so we use the Farnsworth method, and which is doing the fast character speed with a big spacing, and the Koch method is the order that the characters are presented.
Jim, maybe you just show them 30 seconds of G4FON.
Sure, I can show you. That's probably the best way to do it. Let me close my.
I think you'll like this. Sorry, why don't we show you the program that we actually use to teach and how it works?
Let me just open it up here.
Art, I love that tour you got there. That thing is taking me down memory lane.
Yeah, we know he's going to do CW on that pretty soon.
Okay, so this is the program that we have all the students. They all have it on their own computers, and then I use it a couple of times as I'm teaching a class. I don't spend too much time on it, but we'll start with 3 characters. And in fact, let me pump it up to all 40 characters, and then this will show you. Because the order in which this program presents the characters is what we teach. So starting up here with the K, and the first 10 across. So we start with K, M, and R. And then we go across. The last letter that we teach out of the 40 is X. So let me uncheck all these, and I'll just do K, M, and R. And I'm gonna play this program, and so you'll hear it like my students hear it. But we usually run it for 2 minutes. You'll get random characters. I'm just going to run it for maybe 10 or 15 seconds so you can hear how it works. It's got a 5-minute lead in time. So here it comes. Okay, we got a lot of R's there, but if it would kept on running, we'd have a mix of the R and the M and the K. So that's how I do it. And then at the end of the 2 minutes, it shows everything on here. And then the students will check their work and just see how they did. But you can probably hear how the character speed was at 20, but you had a lot of spacing in between. So that's an example of how we present the characters to you.
The mix that you're using is the way it defaults on G4 FON. Is that right?
That is correct.
Thank you. That was curious
Art, that's the Koch order. Koch was a psychologist in Germany in the early 1900s, and they named this after him because they were experimenting with CW over there, and they felt that this order of letters prevented people from memorizing the actual dots and dashes. In other words, when we grew up, we learned EISH5, which is 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot, 4 dot, 5 dot. And the common thought process these days is that it's better to break up the letters and use this Koch order. Now, not to confuse everybody, but we've been doing this now for 3 years. Is the Koch order and the Farnsworth, the only way you can learn. And could you learn the old way, which they call like the Candler method, like the way I learned, where I had a record and I memorized the record and there was nothing else to do. And I got in the air with a true 5 words a minute, not 20 over 5, as we call it. The answer from me is yes. This is another question. If you put this out on a forum, you'd be killed with everybody espousing their wisdom. But from my particular experience, you know, you can learn CW any way you want, but you got to get on the air. I don't care if you learn it 5 words a minute. I can take your 5 words a minute and get you on the air and get you going. Once you get on the air, it's a totally different experience. You know, I always say this, Art. So I had 5 kids, right? And they all took Spanish. The youngest one's 17 now, she's taking Spanish, but she's talking. The other kids were A students in Spanish, but they never talked. You know, if we went to a restaurant, we ordered Spanish food, they would never say anything. Now, in their 20s and 30s, being A students in Spanish, they can't speak anything because they never used it. It's the same thing with CW. It doesn't matter how you learn. It's how you get on the air. That's the end game. That's what the Long Island CW Club is all about.
You know, we found that exact thing when we were teaching in-person classes. And as I said, we did it for several years. I don't think any single student ever got on the air. They learned it, they came to class, they practiced and all that sort of stuff, but they never had that Elmer sitting next to them because we didn't have Zoom then to get them on the air.
Well, you know, Art, we talked about this. We did a presentation to a Westchester, New York club yesterday it was. And it's one of the things that really, this is my opinion, you know, herd ham radio, you know, back in the day, some of you people will remember, you got your novice from a local Elmer, right? The reason I have all these boat anchors here, I got like a 75A4 Collins right over here, which you can't see, is because my Elmer had that. I still have a picture of his shack I could send you all, you know? I could just see it in my eyes. I saw that when I was 11 years old. Not only was this guy a ham radio operator, but he was a pilot and he was a physician, someone to really look up to. So we had these Elmers and they were showing us HF, they were showing us CW. We were there, you know, we knew what it was. Now you get new hams coming, Art, right? They go through the VE process. They see some people talking on an HT. They get a Baofeng. There's nobody on the repeater and they quit because there's nobody showing them the hobby. This is an unfortunate thing. So of course, Art, I agree with you 100%. It's our mission that once we teach CW to have them use it, or they're going to disappear or drop out.
That's right.
And you know, it's not easy because we're fighting this fear, right? What is that fear? I mean, you know, I guess our society, it got, well, look at all the pressures we're under now, politically, environmentally. I mean, fires in California, there's hurricanes all over the place, you know, global warming, wherever we want to talk, and politics. Now we have COVID on top. I mean, our society's under a lot of pressure. I think people are working harder. I don't think people get credit for their jobs, and people are afraid of making mistakes. This is my deduction, where people are afraid to make mistakes. They don't want to be blamed for something. So they think that if they're making mistakes, the first thing they do, they send an error, that they say, sorry, I told you, we don't allow that. And that relaxes people. So I don't know what the answer is, Art. It's a tough one, but we're doing our best. I mean, you can hear I get all charged up about this. You know, it's something, it's our onus that we have to help our hobby, because there's definitely some roadblocks.
Okay, I just thought I'd share a little experience here. I wanted to get my extra in the 80s, back in the late 80s, and a friend of mine gave me an MS-DOS based something called Super Morse, I think it was called. It was pretty primitive. But unlike other learning methods, it gave you sample QSOs and everything to practice. So words and sentences came in. And then I got farther along in thinking and doing some contests and stuff. And I could do 20 words a minute because I passed the extra test in 1991. I got involved with JB and I think Rick N6 IET. I see him on the screen here. And they run a really great CW net on Sunday nights here on the West Coast. And I've doubled my speed. What I really learned from doing high-speed QRQ CW with a guy from Montana on a regular basis is everybody uses a little different abbreviations. Like when you go past a certain speed, you don't write everything down on a piece of paper, start copying in your head, and all of a sudden it gets conversational. It's immersion that does it. I agree with that 100%. I just want to let you know. When you're speaking Spanish all the time in restaurants and things, it's a far different ball of wax. It's the same with CW, in my opinion.
I appreciate all your comments. And actually, we were talking about that last night because there were a lot of guys from New York in there. And we all took our general test in an old building like you did in downtown Manhattan. And there was one guy named Finkelman over there. Dick, K2GMY, are you originally from New York?
No, Howard, I'm a Jersey boy.
Did you take your license in Manhattan at all?
Nope, I'm from South Jersey, and I took it over in Philly, where I shivered and shook the whole time I took all three tests.
Well, we were talking about this guy named Finkelman who used to stand over you with a cigar and scare the living daylights out of 13-year-old boys, you know. So there's a lot of memories about that. And what's your first name, KW6G? Charles. Yeah. So there's a lot of memories about that. But I agree with you in that immersion. And the guy who teaches the kids, he didn't immerse himself in CW in the first 5 months. He drowned himself. 2,400 QSOs on CW in 4 months from getting his license. I mean, so look, the more you drink the Kool-Aid, the better an operator you're going to be. But of course, we know that not everybody wants to do that, and not everybody can do that because, listen, you got obligations, you got family obligations. You know, listen, you got kids, you got a wife. You're not going to stay up in your shack for 4 hours every day. You might as well not come down. You know, I know that. So it's a personal thing, you know, how important it is. But look, the more you practice anything, I always told this to my niece. My niece lived with us, right? So at 9th grade, she was an excellent basketball player, and she was starting, right? She was better than everybody else. But because she wasn't practicing every day, by 11th grade, everybody caught up to her, and she wasn't the starting point guard anymore. They passed her. So it's just a question. Everything in life is just practice. But of course, it's how much you want to do. Now, as I said before, can you have fun at 12 and 15 words a minute? Absolutely. But if you want to get up to the higher speeds, it takes a little bit of time, especially if you're a little bit older.
Hey, Howard, along with what Charles is saying, back in 2013, we were both part of the NAQCC QRP QRS nets, which, by the way, there's still quite a few of those around.
Yeah.
Quite good. And Charles and I were having a conversation one night, and we were talking about learning CW. And Charles said to me, and I never forget this, he said, "You're never going to get any faster until you start doing word copy. That you got to start copying words." And out of that, I put together what became the Barnes word nets.
Very nice.
Where we send a full word at regular speed, and they leave a little space in there. So that kind of leads me to a question. We've had this conversation on the Farnsworth nets about it. What's your thoughts about copying W1AW code at 18 words a minute?
I would say that copying W1AW is better than really listening to an app or a website. Why? Because it's on the air and there's an atmosphere of fading, maybe QRM, little QRN. It gets your ear accustomed to interference. Now, we can pipe in JB interference into the G4FON program. And in my head copy class, we have a lot of guys that are IT, engineers and specialists. And there's one guy who makes QSB recordings for us and also QRM recordings where there are 3 signals at once at different strengths and different pitches. And we teach the students to listen to the weakest one. We work our way down. So I believe if there's an atmosphere in there, a real atmosphere, it's better to do it with W1AW. It's not the end all. Do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, some of us, we say we have problems because there's just not enough space between words. Sometimes it's like a run-on sentence. You can't decide.
Well, it's machine language, and nobody's going to send like that. And if they do, even if you're head copying, JB, you're going to be awful tired listening to that after a while because there's no break. Now, when I send, I kind of send like I talk. I tend to talk with a little bit of hesitation in between, and I always enunciate the end of every word. Why? Because in my business, I was always speaking to foreign people, and you have to make sure they understand you, and you can't chop off the end of your words or talk like a New Yorker and talk really fast like this and not pronounce everything. So I pronounce everything like this. So my mind works like that, and my CW is like that. I don't know how it is, but it is. I never knew it was like this, JB, until I started to teach. I never thought about these things.
Yep.
So it is important to be able to give people a break so they can absorb what you're speaking to. The only reason I would be a proponent of W1AW is because there's an on-the-air element there, which is good training. But that's machine language, and nobody sends like that.
It's tough copy sometimes.
Yeah, and you won't find that on a QSO. So to break down the fear, what do you have to copy? And somebody before was talking about different abbreviations. Who brought that up?
Charles did.
I think it was
Charles.
me.
Charles brought different abbreviations. Okay, could it throw you? Look, let's talk 15 words a minute, which most people will be having their QSO on, okay? If you do a 4-stage protocol, what's 4 stages? Stage 1, RST, QTH, name. Stage 2, rig and weather, right? Stage 3, I've been a ham for 100 years and I'm a retired engineer, okay? Stage 4 is, well, I better get off here now. I'm not going to copy the guy. I'll tell him my wife is calling me, So I'm going to bail out, right? So your bailout is stage 4, right? XYL's got dinner, 73s. At 15 words a minute, you're talking a good 25 minutes.
Yep.
Okay? Especially, that's 25 minutes if you don't ask the guy to repeat anything. That's enough, Now, at 24 words a minute, that'll come down to 10 minutes or so. I don't have this exact, but I'm, giving you approximately. So you can take a little bit more, but you'll get a little bit tired. Now, when you're sending QSO language, you know what's coming. You know the weather's coming in stage 3 if they're following a typical protocol. You hear 70, he's probably giving you a temperature. And if he says cloudy, he's not talking about his eyes. He's talking about the weather, With W1AW, they start reading out of a textbook. And I've done that to give my head copy class training on the impossible. I open up the ARRL handbook. JB, they got the longest sentences in the world. I don't know who wrote that thing. I never read it until I started sending out sending out of this thing to the club. The sentences are like, I have to break the sentences down in 5 parts. I don't know who wrote that thing. There's no periods. It's just sentences, right? And that's what W1AW is sending to you at. Nobody sends like that. So you don't have to be afraid because knowing the protocol, you know what's coming and you just relax. And you want to know something, guys? If you miss the weather, who cares? Do you really care if it's 70 degrees in New York? Maybe you do because it's November. That's interesting. But if we're springtime, what's the difference if it's 70 or 60? You got your RST, you got the guy's name and call, you're golden. It's in the log. Sit back and relax. That's
It's
what
just
it's all
something
about,
you-
Chris, you know?
Howard.
That's what I'm telling you about, not to worry.
Howard,
Yeah.
I will say this. If you can copy W1AW, you can copy just about anybody.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I used it in my head copy class. Jim, tell them about some of the stuff that I used to send. And then they begged me to start sending jokes. One of the YL said, you know, Howard, it's time to lighten up. She called me on the phone. She says, why don't you start doing something else?
I mean, whenever you started sending, it was something about repairing a linear amplifier or something, and all the words that go along with that. And I begged Howard to send us. Can we go back to like the early chapter on good operating practices? let's do that instead. And I got him to do that for a while, but then we change around that head copy class. Now we do some jokes, right? And
yeah, well, we
some other
changed
things.
it around. I mean, we had a little bit of a woman's touch on it. But anyhow, I'll tell you how I do the head copies. We start off with the Lord's Prayer at 30 words a minute. There's a video on YouTube. It shows the Lord's Prayer decoded and the words. I think it's very good spiritually, and it also gets everybody warmed up at 30 words a minute. Then we break down a few sentences of the Lord's Prayer, and we do them at 20 words a minute. Why? Once you're at 30, 20 sounds slow. We call that periodicity training. I didn't learn that word. I didn't come up with that word. One of my instructors did, who's an engineer. That's the type of training that athletes do. You know, they start fast, go slow, and then they, like on a treadmill, then they'll come up and back and forth and back and forth. Then we'll send jokes back and forth, like, why does a chicken cross the street? Well, I'll get to the other side. Then we'll listen to news headlines from the BBC and decode that. All of this is in your head. And then the next thing we do is we have these recordings that have QSB or they have QRM, and then we'll send call signs up to 40 words a minute and see if anybody can get them. That's how we do it. Typical class.
I have another comment.
Yes, sir.
You and I both recommend starting with a straight key.
Yes.
But very few people can send 20 words a minute with a straight key. I can only send 14. So I kind of recommend that as a foreign word speed for learning code. For that reason.
Well, you know, Rick, we say at 18 words a minute, you got to drop the straight key because it's look, I've seen people send it 30 words a minute with a straight key. There's a guy in the video, on a video we have on our website. I think he's sending at 100 words a minute with a straight key. It's unbelievable. These European guys in contests, they do this in East Europe, you know? But we did 18 words a minute. You got to come off the straight key and you're ready for it then. You're ready for it then, Rick. Did I wear you guys out tonight?
Oh, no.
No?
No.
Oh, you're very interesting.
I hope, you know, sometimes you never know if your audience is being polite or they're really engaged. You can't tell that on Zoom.
Well, it's going to be striking midnight for you pretty quick, isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you, my head copy class starts at 10 o'clock New York time, 7 o'clock your time. It goes to 11. And then I get all worked up like this because we're having fun and anyhow, and, you know, we're engaged and we're doing all these type of things. And I love to see the progress of people that were scared to come into that class. And then by the end of the class, they'll catch a call sign at 40 words a minute in their head. And then I usually have to have a cool down period because if I don't cool down for an hour, I can't go to sleep. So it's either doing that or I'm going to watch Turner Classic Movies. So then we wind up talking for about an hour and we come up with all these things. We came up with CW game night after my head copy class where once a month the club does games. We do bingo in CW. The caller sends things, you know, we have on the screen, you get a card on the internet and you pull it up and then he'll send, like if we're doing states, he'll send the state out in CW and then you press on your screen with your mouse and you'll make your X's. So we play CW game night. Jim does Hangman, which is now politically correct snowman. We were told by some people in Seattle not to say hangman anymore. So we call it, we found a snowman. We do CW Unscramble. like a word in CW that's a radio word, and you have to unscramble it. We'll send it scrambled up, and then you have to unscramble it, unjumble it. And we do that type of stuff too. So we came up with that whole concept in the cool down period after the head copy class. So, you know, Jim and I will.
The important thing is that why we do those, and just more about those fun things we do, is that we need to keep it fun, and we need to use every opportunity that we can, like these game nights, to show that even if we have students that only know half the characters, they can still come in and they can still play bingo, and and it shows them that, hey, look, you're already communicating with CW. And of course, it's fun to do that. And we just try to create every opportunity we can where you use it within the club. But of course, the goal is, and what I tell my students is look, it's a little bit of a steep curve, in the beginning to learn these characters, but in 6 months from now, or in less than a year from now, you're going to be having some satisfying, fun conversations in CW with people that you meet on the air, learning something about them. And it's just so satisfying to do that in CW. To me, every contact I make is like the very first one I made. It's just exciting. And, that to be using CW to communicate, it's like using another language.
Yeah, we give certificates out in front of the entire club. If somebody makes their first QSO, or they tell me they make their first QSO, they actually get a printable, a frameable certificate that we email in front of the whole club, and everybody sends congratulations to them, and they'll get about 10 or 15 emails from all over the place. That's wonderful. Keep up the good work. It's very encouraging. So look, it's easy for us to have fun in CW because we like it. So if we like what we're doing, it's good to convey it and to have games and to come up with these things. If you don't like something, it's difficult to get anybody else enthused about it. But we like it.
Howard, I taught my first CW class in probably 1961 or 62. And what you promote and have done is absolutely amazing. I have never seen anything like this. And boy, have you hit it on the head. It is just super. And especially the world can participate. It doesn't have to be your local town only.
Well, thank you very much, Art. I never would have called this the Long Island CW Club if we knew we would be approaching the possibility of having 2,000 members, next year at the rate this is going.
What you've accomplished in 3 years is kind of really remarkable.
Well, thank you very much, Dick. It's not an easy thing to do. This takes me 12 hours per day of admin to run this club. And I have tremendous support from other people like Jim and all the other teachers and a lot of other people working too. But for me, it's 12 hours. My wife thinks I'm crazy. And the only reason I'm getting away with it is because we're locked down, If there were other things to do, I don't think I could have pulled this off. So it was just fated that it hit the right time, but it's a lot of work. But seeing the success of people, meeting people like you, and seeing the enthusiasm here, and I mean, this is a lot of fun for me to come. I mean, who would have ever thought, if you would have told me like 3 years ago that we'd have over 1,000 members and someone would have invited me to speak to a club in California? If you would have told me three years ago, I said, take the needle out of your arm, I mean, I would have never believed it. I didn't plan this. It happened. And meeting people like Jim, Jim teaches many classes. He's passionate about it. And we don't have officers in this organization. There's no president. I don't refer to myself as a president. I'm a co-founder, if anybody asks. We run this club from the bottom up. There's no elections, there's no board. We run it from the bottom up, and we take every single suggestion and every single comment to heart. Somebody says something, we listen, and we do it if we can. These classes that we came up with, I mean, I don't run them, and I didn't invent them. Someone says, hey, Howard, we need this class. Okay, you want to run it? Go with it. Somebody said to me a couple of weeks ago, Why don't we start teaching up to 40 words a minute? I said, Terry, you want to do it? Sure, I'll do it. So you got it. What day you want to do it? Okay, he says Tuesday. Sure, we'll put it on Tuesday. Bingo.
Can I share another thought?
Yes, sir.
This is Charles, KW6G. I've been thinking about the hardest CW to copy. And I think, I can't remember who it was. Someone said, if you send it out of the handbook, it's hard because a handbook's a hard book to read.
Yeah.
I've never been a big fan. Have you ever seen The Imitation Game?
No, I've never seen that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. In order to get enough data to make that computer work, and I've read several books on this subject, the British enlisted a bunch of ham radio operators and other people who knew the code, and they had to copy German CW traffic, and it was all scrambled, but it was in 5-letter groups. Can you imagine to get enough data to break that Enigma machine, which had 157 million combinations, and get it all right without very little errors, without having any order to it?
We have the guy that I was just telling you about, Terry, that's going to teach the 40 words a minute. That's what his job was in the service.
Yeah.
When he was in the Army, he was copying all the Russian traffic, and it was coming in as 5-letter groups.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even thinking about it. It was going right down his arm and onto the typewriter. And he can type to this day up to 70 words a minute. And you want to know the funny thing about it, though, Charles?
All right.
Want to know something? Terry is in my head copy class because he never learned how to head copy. Because these 40 word a minute transmissions of five grouping of letters and numbers went right from his head. It didn't register here. It went right down his arm.
Yep.
Right to his fingers.
Yep. I know a guy when I was in junior college who was an ex-Navy radio operator. 60 words a minute was the fleet champ, he said. Same thing.
I
I
mean,
can't type at all. I can type when I write papers on a computer. Put a CW in my ears, there's no connection.
Yeah, well,
I have to sit there and listen to it, you know. Well, that's why, you know, conversational. That's me at 30 words a minute. But no,
well, I'm experimenting with him now. I told him, I said, okay, Terry, just move your fingers, but don't use a typewriter, and see if we can stop this. Put a plug over there and keep it in your head. So we're working on that now, you know. The head copy.
I might join your head copy class. It sounds like fun.
It's a lot of fun.
There's a whole technique about it. I won't go into it in detail, but I copy CW in my head in 5 different pathways at the same time. And that's the way I teach it.
Wow.
Now, I thought everybody did this. I thought everybody did because as a kid, you know, when we learned CW, we all got up to high speeds very quickly. And when I joined a local radio club, of which quite a few of them are in the Long Island CW club, when they told me that, when I told them my speed, what I could copy, I thought everybody copied that speed who did CW, because I had never belonged to a radio club before. And then the next week I came in there, they all came and all of them were sitting around me. They wanted to know how I did it. And that's when I started to learn that, you know, this is something that a lot of people want to learn and don't know much about.
Exactly.
But that 5 pathways, it's a little bit hard to teach, but what's exciting about it is the 17-year-old girl, one of our students, who's actually she's 16. She's the daughter of one of our members. She actually copies like that. You know, we have a study in our club file, I told you it's very extensive, that says that some German scientists did a study on CW, and they say that learning Morse code creates white matter pathways in the brain. Now, these things, with me, I guess I was lucky. They were formed when I was 13. It's a little bit harder to form a white matter pathway when you're 60. With a 16-year-old girl, evidently it happens.
When it happens, all of a sudden the light comes on.
You know, so this is the type of stuff we talk about. Look, not everybody likes this subject. You know, some people just like to learn their CW and that's it. Or some people like to talk about the cerebralness of it. I have in my head copy class about 24 people I'm not saying there's 100 in there, but there's a segment of the club that likes to come. You guys
Howard,
are-
I just wanted to mention that my favorite thing about the club is that what we're teaching 50 classes, adult classes a week now, I think, or maybe more now. But you can drop into any class at any time. You're not locked into where you have to start when this class is going to start on this date, and then you stick with it for 6 weeks. They continually run, and you can drop it at any time, so you're not tied in. So if you're really busy and you can only attend a couple times a week, you could find a B1 class or B2 or whichever one you like that is at your time that works for you. And you don't always have to go to the same one. You can go to different ones. So it's really good for that aspect.
Well, I'm very impressed, Jim, that we started off with, I think, 39 people, and 31 people going 2 hours into this thing are staying. I must admit that I'm very impressed, because I know from running, Ed, we run many a presentation. We run quite a few a week. And once you get to that 60-minute thing, you start seeing that tapering off in Zoom very quickly, because the attention span of most people is about an hour for these type of topics. But holding on to 31 out of 39, I should invite you all guys to come to my cool down period after my head copy class, and we'll just talk. You guys are great.
Oh, we just don't know how to turn off Zoom. It's stuck on.
Well, listen, I don't want to hold you guys. I mean, if you guys want to talk more, I'll talk, but I don't want to overstay my welcome. I feel maybe, Michael, we already did,
No, absolutely not. I was going to say I hate to say that there's nothing polite about our group, because we're all very polite, but hanging around when folks aren't interested is not part of the MO of this club. So everybody that's here, you've held everybody's rapt attention, and we're really, truly very grateful.
Well, I really appreciated the invite, and I think I told you guys when we started, I like the Q&A better than the presentation. The presentation was just going through the motions and trying to make it fun and interesting, but I really like taking the questions and seeing what you guys have on your mind and what experiences that you have, and comparing notes with Art, hearing Chris's concerns, which are so typical, hearing some of the things that Charles said. All of these are very interesting questions.
One last quick comment I just wanted to say, just in the naming of your club, Long Island CW, I have heard a local ham around here on local repeaters, not here in Benicia, talking about it. And I was wondering, how in the world are you doing that here in California? But anyway, you have explained it very good. So just wanted to pass that on. I've heard of you guys.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we have gotten members from 2-meter repeaters all over the country with just people talking about it. I keep all the statistics of where people found out about us. The biggest promotion of our club came from the dit.fm podcast, which is all related to CW. And then if anybody knows Ham Radio Crash Course on YouTube with Josh, I see Justin is nodding his head, that we did a show with Josh a few months ago that probably has about 11,000 hits on it now, which is not bad for a show on CW. And Josh has something like, I don't know, what does he have, Justin? Something like 200,000 subscribers now. So he's got a lot of traffic through his channel. So, people find out about us, Chris.
Yeah, that's absolutely where I heard about you. And it's really great to be able to find programs and new interesting things. Josh does a great job, but again, I'm just so thrilled with the work that you guys do, and just the amount of program that you guys put on and the amount of time that you spend. I'm really looking forward to it. So,
well, you're all welcome to join. As a matter of fact, Josh is a member, and if you look on our homepage of our website, longislandcwclub.org, you will see Josh's first QSO that he did with me in the same class that I've told you about. I didn't know he was recording that. and he edited it beautifully and sent it to me. I said, Josh, I said, can we put this on a homepage? And he said, sure. So that's typical of what it's like. But, listen, I would love to have all of you people in the club. I'm not just saying that. We don't really need any more members, and I don't need another 12 hours of work. But, you guys are really nice, and I think you would all do very well. I mean, if you like everything you heard tonight and you're hanging around with me and Jim for 2 hours, Lord knows that you'll like the Long Island CW Club. I don't have to sell it to you. This is what it is. Everything that we've told you tonight is exactly what you're going to see.
Howard,
Yeah.
you've sold us. This is Brad, K6JPR, and we're in Pleasant Hill in Jim's backyard, and certainly enjoyed the session. And you're motivating me to get the rust and off my fist. I made my first novice contact the day I got my license 66 years ago, as of January this coming year. And you got me charged up again. I'm gonna blow the dust off the keys and lubricate the wrists and go for it.
I have to say, Michael, I mean, I really enjoyed this. I've done with Jim many presentations. We've enjoyed them all, but this is the one I'm always going to remember that. And I'm not just saying that. I really appreciate your welcome and your attention span and your kindness here. And the Q&A it wasn't Q&A. We really had like a rap session here,
Yep.
This is really, really cool. And I'll always remember it, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And again, so will we. So real quick, anybody else have any last second questions? I don't want to cut anybody off.
Howard's just made it so easy and friendly.
You're absolutely right, Ed. Absolutely right.
Well, you got a good bunch here, Michael, and it's good that you keep people cohesively together and connected like this. And, you have presentations and you go looking for presentations. We do the same thing. I mean, 2 of our instructors have turned into I call them like Hollywood booking agents, because not everybody that you contact from YouTube or for the internet is going to respond, and they're busy or they don't want to do a presentation, or, you really gotta, it takes a lot to get talent to come in and talk to the club. And, but when you do bring in outside people, I mean, listen, we're all shut down, and unfortunately it looks like it's getting even worse now, right? Yep. For the winter time. So it's good when you bring the world on Zoom into your life like this.
Absolutely.
Howard?
Yeah.
You mentioned the SKCC in passing as part of your original presentation, but you didn't dwell on it. And I just wanted to say the Straight Key Sentry Club is the absolute most active CW organization there is. And almost all of their QSOs, where they're trying to get points for working other SKCC members, are straight key, 13 word a minute. So anybody that's kind of an intermediate and is afraid of getting, going down to the lower part of the band, go to 50 kilohertz above the bottom of every HF band, and you'll find SKCC members that are very happy to go 15, 13 words a minute.
Well, I agree with you entirely. I'll say one thing and then I'll turn this over to Jim, because he actually does this on a daily basis. We are forging an alliance now, Rick, with SKCC. One of their board members became a member of the club, and we're begging one of their charter members to do a presentation to us. I think we finally are getting, him to do it. He's asking about Zoom. He's never done this before. So one of the founding members is going to speak to us, and it hasn't been easy, but we're going to get him. And Jim, maybe you could tell the folks here some of the things you do with SKCC and what level you've reached.
Well, I just started working the SKCC the beginning of this year, and And I agree with you, Rick. I encourage all my students to get out and practice with the SKCC. I tell them don't live there, go there and practice. I still want them to get out and do regular QSOs and practice the regular protocol. But if you can't find somebody on the air, you can always find an SKCC member, and it's always a fun, quick contact.
And we have two people in our club that are senators now, which is a certain level, that they give you a name, and no matter how, depending on how many contacts you've made. So we have two senators. We have the senator from North Carolina. We tease him.
And by the way, Jim, you and I were kind of competitors on the NAQCC anniversary.
Oh, that's right. It's good to meet you in person. N6 IET. Now I see who you are.
I see you didn't step up to be the sprint N3A/6, and I ended up getting to do that, but I worked you while I was doing that.
No, I remember that. That was fun. Actually, I'm the California coordinator for the January K3Y event for SKCC.
Cool.
So hopefully you can help me out and be one of the operators for that event.
Rick, one last thing. We are the Long Island chapter of NAQCC. If you look at their newsletter, which just came out, do you get their newsletter?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so look down in the club section.
Right.
And you'll see our September and October outings. I just told you about, we went down to the beach today where we're 70 degrees. There'll be photographs of that in the December thing, but in the November SKCC newsletter, you'll see our September and October outings with a write-up that I did.
And guess what? There's 1.5 pages about me in that newsletter too.
Of which one? This month?
This month, yeah, the one that just came out.
You mean where they do a feature article of like of a member?
It was basically my submissions and pictures having to do with the celebration in October, and they decided to make mine one of the featured ones, I guess. So
do you have the dipole up on an apartment building?
That's me. Yeah, that was
I remember that.
That's what I was using during that event, but I can't keep that up there because I don't really have permission. I sneak it up there once in a while.
Good, that's good going. We got to be sneaky sometimes.
The apex of that dipole is 90 feet above street level, and it's a full half wave on 80 meters, a full half wave on 40 meters.
Very nice.
All right. Any other thoughts?
Well, we could pull an all-nighter like we used to do in college when you just don't go to sleep, right?
Okay with me. Is there some timeout on Zoom, Bob?
Tomorrow is a holiday.
As long as we want to.
Yeah, tomorrow is a holiday. Actually, our club is doing a, Jim, tell them about your Veterans Day thing that you were organizing.
Yeah, we decided we wanted to do something for Veterans Day, but we weren't sure what. So I thought, as a recently retired vet, what do we do? So I sent out an email to all the club members and said, hey, everyone come on in at this time. We're going to invite all the veterans, but it's not limited just to veterans. But what I'm going to do is go around the room in Zoom and just let each veteran introduce themselves, tell us when and where they served, what Veterans Day means to them. And so we'll give everyone a chance to talk a little bit, and plus give our club members, give our vets a chance to meet each other, because we all don't know who we are yet. We haven't done this before, and to let the rest of the club look at the, meet the vets in the club. So I'm looking forward to it. Everyone's pretty excited.
There was an article in the local Long Island newspaper that was done on my daughter, because she learned CW, and they came to the house and they interviewed her and everything like that. And it wound up being put all over Long Island in the center of their Sunday newspaper. And two veterans saw this and contacted the newspaper and wanted to speak to me. Listen to this, will you? 98 years old, World War II D-Day vet, doing CW at the Battle of the Bulge. Can you believe this?
Wow.
Still knows his CW. I got him on video because he came and did a presentation to the club, right? He went through A through Z orally, like A, da, B, da, da. Hadn't thought about that for I don't know how many years. 98 years old, sharp as a tack. Knows his CW. We gave him an honorary. We took him into the club. And in the same meeting, talking about vets, we had an 82-year-old vet did CW at the DMZ in Korea, right after the Korean War, like 1954. He was on the DMZ, you know, the borderline between North and South Korea, doing CW for the Army there.
He was working out of a cave, he said.
Yeah, working out of a cave. We took both of these guys. We give people like that lifetime honoraries. We took them in. We sent them the CW Morse keys and the oscillators, and they come into class once in a while. And we're going to try and get them to get into your veterans thing tomorrow, Jim. But the 98-year-old has trouble with Zoom. He can't do it by himself. So the kids are going to try and get him on. We'll see if he comes.
You just mentioned something that we didn't touch on, and it appears that you guys have an oscillator you recommend?
We recommend cwmorse.us, cwmorse.us. They have inexpensive 3D printed keys, and they have inexpensive, like $35 oscillators that sound pretty good, Art. So we send everybody to them, and we've never heard of any problems with it. All right, Michael, we really shouldn't overstay our welcome. This is a 2-hour gig.
That's right, Howard. If we might not.
You guys got things to do. So again, our heartfelt thanks. Again, you're right. Keeping the 30 plus members rapt attention for 2+ hours is extraordinary. So,
well, I really, you're a very gracious and gentle people, and I appreciate it. So
see, Howard, these are my people. This is where I come from.
Well, I said this even before we got started, that the nicest place, I wanted to move to San Francisco. I spent a lot of time there. I had a good friend who lived in Wally Creek. I know all about that. I remember taking the BART train from the apartment that I was renting in down by the crookedest street of the world and taking the BART out to the East Bay. I remember, and that area north of San Francisco, around Mount Diablo and all around there, and that Point Reyes Park where K6KPH is. I'm sure you all know about that. Not in this lifetime. Maybe when I'm reincarnated, I'll come back as a cricket and I'll live over there. I don't know. Doesn't look like I'm going to get off Long Island.
I'd like to have you at KPH too.
What's that?
Come visit and let us know when you come.
Well, my sister lives in Palm Springs, and the game plan was to get a second home there, but that was kind of stopped because, we don't really want to travel on planes unless we have to now. So,
no, I get it.
Everything's on hold. It's just not good if you have a bucket list, right?
No, but, brainstorm any way you want. Drive, you could do Zoom and your meetings from the road. But all I'm saying is if you show up in Northern California, just let us know.
Well, I appreciate that, Michael. It's a very kind invitation. And I hope that maybe Jim can join the Benicia Club. And that would be a good thing, Jim, huh?
Yeah, I got to talk. Now that I've met everybody here, we'll have to talk about that.
All right, listen.
I have a show and tell.
I will. What do you got there?
This is a margarine tub, but it's also a keyer with
there you go.
With a battery.
Oh, so you can. He's got his oscillator right there. Well, Howard, I have just one more thing to say.
Right, 73 is SK. And then
Thank
two
you.
dots, right?
That's right. I heard my dots come back at me. That's good.
All right, listen, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this. I will always remember this meeting here. This was once in a lifetime type of opportunity. Really, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. What a wonderful
For us too, Howard.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Howard.
Really enjoyed it.
Okay, thank you for staying so long. Good night.
Hope to see you in the club.
All
Yeah.
right.
3.
Thank you.
Thank you, Howard.
Everybody, bye-bye.
Very interesting 2 hours.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, 73s.
73,
Good night.
everybody. Bye-bye.